Hey guys, this is Dr. Sandy with another exciting episode for you and your family and friends. And I'm going to be continuing this 101 series, kind of like what are the basics or fundamentals of certain health challenges. And today we're going to be talking about something else that I consider very serious, and we've been fortunate to help people with this issue, is something called vertigo. And before we jump into that, as always, if you're new to the video, welcome. My name is Dr. Sandy. I'm going into my 24th year of chiropractic practice. I'm very, very passionate about what I do, so welcome. If you've been watching for some time, thank you so much for your continued support, and let's jump right into it. So vertigo, what is it? And it can be very scary. Obviously, I've talked to patients who've gone through it. So imagine basically someone getting dizzy, but this is like very extreme form of that. And I've heard patients say like they feel like everything's spinning, the room is just moving quickly. There may be issues where they feel nausea, dizziness, obviously, but extreme dizziness. It can potentially affect hearing, vision, but the big thing is this sense of like everything's just moving, extreme dizziness, feeling of uncoordination. It can be very, very scary. And for a lot of times when I've talked to patients, it almost feels like it came out of nowhere if you talk to people who've experienced it. So what are some of the causes and what's going on? So if we look at from a neurological perspective, one part of the brain stem that can get affected. So we actually have obviously the brain sitting between your brain and the spinal cord is a very, very, very powerful structure called your brain stem. Now, if we look at actually the brain stem, what it controls, I wrote this down. It's your breathing system, your consciousness, blood pressure, heart rate, and sleep. I mean, it's very powerful. And again, that is literally sitting just below the skull and just below the skull and just above C1. So right over in this area, very, very powerful, very delicate area. And if that gets aggravated, so we have something called cranial nerves that are coming from the brain. And if specifically, when we talk about things like vertigo, specifically if cranial nerve 8 gets affected, inflamed, or if there's some kind of pressure or something on this nerve, if it gets disturbed in any way, we can see symptoms like vertigo. So what does cranial 8 can actually control? And I wrote this down as well. So basically, information about one's position and movement in space into the brain. So I'm going to say that again. Information about one's position and movement in space into the brain. So basically, your concept of self, where you are in your environment, how you are relating to your environment, where you are, that sense of self, it is all controlled by cranial nerve 8. So it's a very, very powerful nerve. And if this at all gets disturbed, we can see the symptoms of vertigo. Now, could there be other causes? Yes. But what makes our office unique and why we've had success is we have the technology to measure if there's any type of distortion, interference, pressure at this top area affecting those balance systems, and in this specific case, cranial nerve 8, you can see the symptoms of vertigo, which again can be very scary. Now, let's get into some of the things. So we know where it originates from. It can come from over here. What would be some of the causes of this area getting disturbed? The upper cervical area, the brainstem, cranial nerve 8, what can disturb those systems? So number one, as always, and I really try to teach this as much as I can to our patients, is that stress will always be the number one thing that affects the nerve system. So when we're under stress, we go into something more of a sympathetic tone, sympathetic overstimulation. The body gets into a fight or flight. And we definitely need this. There's times where you need that stress response to get out of something. You're pushing something heavy, you're in something stressful, the heart rate goes up and everything. And short term, you need that. The problem is that if you stay stimulated long term, it can start to damage certain systems in the body. So we need to balance the sympathetic, which is your stimulation system, with something called your parasympathetic, which kind of tells the system it can relax. We don't have to push on the gas anymore. You can rest. You can recuperate, you can repair, and we want more of an activation on that system. But as I said, it's been amazing. Chiropractic has been helping people with vertigo, and I personally in my own clinic have had people with, to me it's like a spectrum, but like even dizziness issues. But when people have had vertigo, we've been blessed that we've been able to help them. And if you talk to someone, again, like any health condition in the body can be very scary. It can affect your quality of life, but I'd really put vertigo up there. If you talk to someone who's experienced it, it can be very debilitating. It can definitely shatter your sense of confidence. You're just not sure where you're moving and getting coordinated. So I would urge you that if you're listening to this to contact your local chiropractor. We're here for us, whoever you feel comfortable with, but it's something you should look at, because I think a lot of times when vertigo shows up, there's an emphasis about the ear canal, crystals in the ear, and I can see that being a factor. But if we look at the way the body's designed, one of the supreme systems in the body is brain and nerve system. There's no question. It's running everything, it's coordinating everything. And let's say there's other systems that may be contributing to the vertigo. I would still say that having a healthy nerve system, having the system balanced, is only going to help you feel better and help in that stability that you're looking for. So taking care of the spine, finding out if there is stress or pressure, and then very gently retraining the system, getting into a new pattern, retraining the body, retraining the nerve system to come into that neutral position where everything can function the way it should. I could only see that being helpful. Coming back, as I mentioned, as I said, chronic stress over time, when we get stressed, the whole physiology of your body changes, and that constant stress can disturb the upper cervical area. What are some other things? Well, obviously, the nerve, when it's under stress, is usually inflamed. So diet plays a big role as well. And I keep saying this again and again, that things like a high sugar diet, not eating the best foods, constantly eating foods that are very rich. Processed food can cause, obviously, an inflammation response. And I would say another thing I've noticed as well, when you talk to people with vertigo, when they usually, a lot of times I've seen this pattern that when it first occurred, they may have been sleeping, and then they suddenly, they didn't actually even do anything radical, but they just kind of moved their head and it triggered this whole vertigo response. And it seems to be usually in their sleep. So if we can step back, I mean, we can look at it and go, wow, this came out of nowhere. But the way I look at the body more and more, I believe that everything has a cause and effect. We may see something and be like, holy cow, how did this happen? But I do believe the body's intelligent. It's made to be healthy. And if it's not expressing that, there's a reason for it. So I would also believe that over time, maybe this patient, before the vertigo, maybe over time, there was stress developing in this area, maybe honestly from using a computer too much, maybe lifting something, pushing something. Maybe there was an injury before and the body tried to adapt, and now it can't adapt anymore, and it came as vertigo. So I would urge you that if you're going through something like this, or whatever health condition you have, step back and be a detective, be a scientist, and say, okay, this has happened. How did this happen? And also, let's say there's a person, I'll just make a random name, let's say person X goes to the doctor, and they say, okay, that person X is now diagnosed with high blood pressure, cholesterol. A lot of times it could be like, wow, this came out of nowhere. But I would urge you again, step back, be honest with yourself, look at your lifestyle. Have you been taking care of yourself? Look at your diet, and just ask better questions. And the reason you do that is when you ask better questions, you can have a better control of your health. Things become predictable, and you just have this sense of ownership. I think when we ask questions like, wow, how did this happen? We get away from being like a victim, and we step into what can I do better? What do I need to change? So I not only want to recover from this, I don't want this to ever happen again. And I think that's a very powerful place to be in. So I really hope this video did help you. Again, we talked about vertigo, how any stress in this upper cervical area can disturb an area called the brainstem. From the brainstem, we have cranial nerve 8, which can affect our sense of space. It can cause vertigo-like symptoms. And then obviously taking care of it, obviously being very mindful of this area. It's very powerful. It's very delicate. Making sure obviously that there's no injuries here. And even with your children, really, let them have fun if they're playing anything, but just teach your family as well that this is a very delicate, very powerful area. And if you're starting to have neck pain here, I would highly suggest to at least get a spinal checkup, get it assessed. Again, we're here for you. You can call or text our office at 905-896-3393. If you just want a checkup of your spine and nerve system, if you are having neck pain, maybe headaches or something, or if you're even having vertigo or someone you care about has vertigo, 905-896-3393. Or if there's someone else that you feel comfortable with, look for some measures to handle the situation with vertigo. I know, again, it can be very disturbing. Medically speaking, I think usually they'll recommend certain medications to kind of stabilize that situation. I was reading in extreme situations, they may do like a surgery. And as always, like, is there a time and place for those procedures? Probably is, but I always believe in what I try to teach our patients is anything in life, especially with health, try to go natural, go conservative. If that's not working for whatever reason, there's the medication. I think surgery, when you're going into the body, whatever situation is, it should be like the last resort after everything's been evaluated, everything's been tried. Surgical options are there, but a lot of times the body is amazing. A lot of times you can work with it in a conservative fashion. If things are caught early enough, you can make really good changes in the body, and especially with something like vertigo. And if you're even getting mild symptoms of dizziness, get it checked and get investigated before it turns into a vertigo. I think a lot of times people might just have small symptoms, light symptoms, they kind of dismiss it. They're like, I probably just got up too fast, I moved a certain way, oh, it happens, once a month, not a big deal. Those are the great times to actually get it checked and get it investigated. And then you have a better chance of having a quality of life, not living in fear, and confronting it by working with a professional and making sure everything's working the way it should, so you can have the best life possible. So this episode was about all things vertigo, Vertigo 101. And again, if there's any way we can help, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at 905-896-3393. Text us, call us, we're here for you. If you have any questions, we'd love to be of service. And God bless you. Thank you so much.